This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with vocalist Robbie Thomas Walsh of the Deep Purple-inspired original rock act Purpendicular. Last time I talked to you was 3 years ago with the release of your third studio album, Human Mechanic, but I feel maybe we should reestablish who Purpendicular is in case someone didn't watch that interview. You originally started as a Deep Purple cover band named after the 1996 album by Deep Purple. How long did that go on before you switched to becoming an original band?
Well, probably about, about 6 years. 2018, we definitely there was definitely a shift because even under the tribute moniker, I'll be honest with you, George, we just wanted to get paid because before then it was just so difficult if you're an original band to make ends meet. I had to have a part-time job in a little bar where I think every Irishman knows how to pour beer and tell good stories. So that was easy to me, second nature. And when we decided, okay, we gotta do something where we're going to get paid. So we didn't want to copy anybody, but we knew that the tribute market was doing all right. So we said, well, listen, what band? You can't really do the Floyd because you need a massive light show. You'd have to invest heavily in that, And so the common denominator was Deep Purple, but we definitely didn't want to dress up like them or act like them, or we wanted to take them templates, them songs, and just do our own thing with them without being too diverse. And there's lots of space in them songs to be expressive. So that went on, and we became more and more expressive. And Ian started to do more and more tours with us, and then we started to take on big players, very big players. And Ian said to me one day, "Listen, I want to go away from the Purple thing. I'm doing it on tour anyway with Deep Purple." So he wanted to go more into the Whitesnake and more Purpendicular original songs. So where we're at right now is we're just a live rock and roll band. I know that's how long is a piece of string, but that's all we can say is we're a live animal. We're a live rock and roll band, warts and all. We don't rehearse. That'd be cheating. And you couldn't call us a tribute band. There's so many great tribute bands, and I wouldn't want to disappoint anybody that comes along and say, hey, he does not play like Richie Blackmore. I mean, we got Murray Gold on guitar, who was with Bonham, Elton John, Eric Clapton, big players. And to put us into a category like that is a little bit unfair, I'd say. But I understand it. If somebody hasn't done their homework properly, they would say, well, it's a Deep Purple tribute band. But if they come and see the show, they would know it's not. So as I say, there's many great tribute bands out there doing it far better than what we'd ever be able to do. Well, we probably would, but we don't want to, copy. And they're doing a great thing. And if people want to go along and see that, they'll have a bloody great night. But when you come and see Purpendicular, yes, IAN PAICE is on the drums. Yes, we do have a Hammond organ. But we're a rock and roll band. We cover a big spectrum. We jam a lot on stage. We play Freddie King stuff. We play Paul Rodgers stuff. We play, the Roadhouse Blues with the Doors, and we go through a whole, whatever takes our fancy on the night. Buddy Guy stuff, everything, Yeah, mixed bag.
Purpendicular is getting ready to release their fourth studio album, Band, on October 10th. There's quite the story behind the making of this album. We go back to the summer of 2024. You guys are in a remote village high in the mountains of Portugal. And then, well, before we get to what happens, was there something in particular that you chose this location first?
Yeah, you think you're doing the right thing sometimes, and you just make a complete balls of it, But what happened was with this, we said, look, we don't want it like to when we were writing the Human Mechanic album, it was during COVID time, so we couldn't be in the same room together. So we had to do the horrible thing of writing over the internet, which is a nightmare. I hate it, because it takes you so long to correct some simple little thing that will be corrected in a second if you're in the same room. So I said, listen, what we do here? And Joe, our roadie, he has a beautiful house and a villa up on top of in the remote area just outside Porto. It's a gorgeous little village. And he's one of the last mountains, right up the top. You can't go any further. And I said, oh, that sounds like a great idea, because he invited us out, you know. So the day before we were going out, he said, Robbie, it's getting a bit hot here. And I said, oh, don't worry about that, you know, lovely weather. And he says, no, 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 I mean the fires. And I said, well, how bad is it? Is it okay? And he said, yeah, it's okay. You know, you'll be all right. And I said, oh, yeah, no problem, you know. So as I was landing in the plane, I could see these sporadic fires breaking out and smoke billowing up into the sky. It's about 38 degrees. Don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I know you guys do Fahrenheit. But anyway, the plane landed and we had a couple of cold beers on the beach in Porto. And we proceeded to go up this mountain. We were stopped halfway up there by the fire brigade. And they said, you don't want to go up there. It's too bad. And Joe, as I say, I wrote, he said, listen, my property is up there. I've got to get up there. And of course, our rental gear were up there. You know, it wasn't our gear, it was rental. So it wasn't a big deal for us. But we said, hey, we're here to work. Let's give it a go. So up we went. And when we got there, George, it was still broad daylight, summer sun beating down. It was a gorgeous location. It was like something from a postcard. Beautiful. So I cracked a couple of beers and we were just sitting there admiring the scenery, but we could hear this crackling noise, all this crackling and smoldering and all. And it started to get worse, you know, and I said, oh, I'll be okay. It should be okay. But then I realized as it got dusk and dark, we realized we were surrounded by the fucking fire. It was all the way around us. And I went, oh, no, you know, what do we do? And so Alessandro, our keyboard player, who doesn't play pranks at all, he's as straight as a die. He doesn't, you know, he's not that sort of guy. Came bursting into the villa. And he said, Robbie, we got to get the fuck out of here. We got to leave. We got to leave now. We got to get out of here. You know, we're going to be killed. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he said, come with me. Went out the door, and the last track, the only kind of dirt track down to where any sort of road was, which is halfway down the mountain, the fire had engulfed just behind a clump of trees and was just about to make its way over the last track out of there. So we literally had to grab our suitcases and run down this mountain. We had no other chance. And that's basically what happened. And one of the locals was there to greet us where the first road was, in a little Land Rover or whatever, and took us to a beautiful spa, an alternative location where we could just sit and look at this bloody disaster. It was a hell of a night. And fire brigade lost, bless them, some of them lost their lives that night, and also people lost their homes, you know. And that's where the band whole thing, that was the concept, band. You know, but we had to also then, after this experience, we had to write about kind of an autobiographical thing, tell the story of exactly what's happened to us, you know. It was a moment. We didn't know whether, you know, we knew the flames probably wouldn't get us, but what we were afraid of was the smoke. It was toxic. The smoke was the most dangerous thing, you know. And because we were the farthest up there was a post, our webmaster posted something instantly that we were in danger. And the next morning, the British press were calling me. They got my number. How they got it through the internet, I don't know. And they got my number and they wanted a story. You know, I plugged the album. They got the story for the fire. You know, but George, it's a one-off thing. You never know in this job, or you know, when you leave the house in the morning, you just don't know what awaits sometimes. But this was unprecedented, and luckily, we're still here to tell the tale. Yeah.
Did you lose the villa?
No, the villa was fine. Which was funny was because we lost Joe. Well, you know, we lost him that night. He ended up cutting down trees with some of the locals. He stayed there, but we thought we'd lost him, and there was a huge panic. We said, "Fuck, Joe's dead. He could be dead," you know. And next morning, he was laughing on the telephone. So yeah, I admired your humor. You know, he said, "No, we had to cut down the trees to stop the fire coming down and getting over the path where his villa was and the house." So he was there with a chainsaw just caning these trees down, apparently. So, but in the morning we got a call. So, guys, you can come back up, because it wasn't an option to go home, because we needed to write. You know, the record company were pressing, and so we needed to get this bloody thing done. And the next morning we were able to go back up because the fire burned itself out in that area, and we started work the next day. We did all the pre-production up there and had everything ready for the studio when we had to record. So yeah, it was no that luckily Joe kept his house, but some others weren't so fortunate. Yeah, unfortunately.
So now the album band becomes part your original concept of cultural sensitivities.
That's right. Yeah.
Your experience through this fire. So why don't we talk a little bit about the songs that have been released so far? Blood Red Moon, I'm assuming, relates to the fire experience. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, they just actually, that's very clever that you said that, because that's where I stopped in the previous question. As we arrived in that new, the alternative location where we were staying overnight until this fire went away or burned itself out. I remember we were on the veranda and we were talking about, okay, we've got the band concept and we're all happy with that. And then we said, look, we got to write about the events of what's happened to us. And everybody was in agreement with that. And I don't know at what point, but I remember just walking on the veranda with a beer, and I looked up and I saw this monstrous blood orange, like evil red moon, you know. So, and I just said it out loud, blood, look at the blood red moon. And I think it was Alessandro said to me, oh, that's a great title, why don't we use that? And I says, yeah, cool. And I says, has it been done? And I said, well, probably. You know, but hey, come on, you know, it was completely within our rights, you know, after what happened. So that was the story of the lyric from a lyrical perspective. An old man watches from afar as his house is burning down. You can see his eye in the video. The record company made an AI video of it, and it basically tells a story of what happened. Shows the whole place burning down and the whole carnage that was caused. Yeah. So that was Blood Red Moon. Yeah.
You've released the album's title track, Band, which is kind of the focus of the second part of the album. Why don't you, I mean, we all know what's going on in the world from the last it probably started around the COVID lockdown times, that sensitivities seem to get amped up. You say the wrong thing, you make the wrong little joke, then it could cost you. But I mean, there's also the other side of it. You think you're saying the right thing, and
you're not.
You're not. So,
you know, it's getting harder and harder to communicate. That's the problem. You know, I always think if you treat things with satire and humor, it's the best way. Because if you're told, you know, we all know this as kids in school. If you're told not to say something, you're going to bloody say it. You know, if you treat it with humor, it goes away. It's not so tense, you know. But you know, I didn't believe in non-binary until I fixed the brakes on my bicycle, and I went forward on the handlebars. That's the only, you know. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I think the world is becoming a little bit too sensitive. You know, I understand there is a line, and I think most of us are clever enough to know where that line is. But it's just, I mean, the concept band and the whole cancel culture, or culture cancelers, however you want to call them. I mean, for me, it's becoming a mockery. It's becoming a parody. It's becoming a comical situation where it's just getting silly, really ridiculous, to the point where we just wrote a song about it and just had a laugh, you know, and actually agreed with each other. Hey, you know what? It's really cool to be banned nowadays. If you're not banned, you're obviously not doing the right thing. If you're not banned, you know, you can't be such a do-gooder that you can't say anything, you know. And then of course, no freedom of speech. I just did an interview in a German magazine, and the interviewer completely disagreed with me. He said he thinks there's freedom of speech, but if you go to the UK at the moment, that's definitely not the case. Even though the Prime Minister says it is, it's definitely not. You know, so I have to give kudos there to is it DJ Vance, JD Vance, DJ Vance. But anyway, I don't want to get any way political or anywhere near it, because it always causes a destructive conversation, no matter what side you're on. So, but we're not on any side. It's just observational. And it's just for us comical, the whole thing. And we hope at some point we come to our senses and we're able to talk again properly to each other without this stupidity. Anyway.
What I find comical is that something is said that is completely satirical or meant to be humorous or something like that, and people take it dead serious. And then all hell breaks
loose. And you get the other people as well, and they will look for it to be able to, to use this newfound sort of power, that they might have. Apparently, there was an old woman in her 70s, right? She was banged up in jail in the UK because she went on Twitter. Now I don't know what the context of the subject was, but she said something way out of line against immigrants or something like that. I don't know what it was, but police came and arrested her. But it doesn't. It's I don't know where the world is going, but I'll tell you what. I've only got another 20, 30 years left, and I'll be smiling down on the line. Well, hopefully.
It's a much better world if you stay off the internet.
Oh my God, it is. Do you know what? I'll tell you what. When I was doing the record and I had to do the promotional stuff, I stopped doing the social media thing about 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I used to be on it all the time, and it was such a zapper. It just zapped your time, and it zaps everything in your brain because you're looking at people doing this and that, and you kind of, it's unbelievable. And I wanted to spend some family time with my daughter, and I just said, right, that's it. I'm sick of it. If I'm not on a tour or I'm not doing interviews or anything to do with the business, that's it. I'm staying away from social media. I don't need it. So, and it became, you know what? As the years are gone by, it's just one big advertising. I don't know half of the things on it. You click on it nowadays. What the fuck is that? Who's he? You don't know who it is. I mean, if you went up to somebody in the old days at a bus stop and you didn't know them, and you show them a picture of your dinner, and you show them a picture of your dog, now you'd have 2 followers. The FBI and the police would be after you. I mean, when you break it down into that context, no, I try to minimize it. And just what you said there, you come back a completely new person. Because years ago, that's how I grew up, playing football in the fields every day, climbing trees. And we didn't have phones. We were lucky to have a landline in the house, so when you turn off the internet, you rediscover nature again and different things. Of course, the younger people, they want to be engaged in all this. I understand that it's a different generation to us. And but when you just get out in the nature and connect with the world, I recently was in Ireland with my daughter, and we just went up the mountains, got the days up there, picnic, and just wonderful stuff, But you can't really tell that to the younger generations. They have to find things out for themselves. Yeah.
True. Now, Band is your second album for Metalville Records, but I was just reading it's your last one for Metalville Records. Can you talk more about that?
Well, we came to a decision where the resources that we were looking at, I sat down with Ian, and we were having a chat, and we realized the resources, we need a little bit more. And all good things come to an end. There's an ending in every relationship, I guess. And we're very proud of the 2 records that we've done with Metalville. Some nice people in there. And but we just made a decision. It's time for us to move on to pastures new, and we'd call it a natural progression. Yeah.
It happens. Sometimes you need more muscle.
Well, there's a track on the album called The End. And all we have is time in the world. All we have is time. All of us. We're all on a ticker. And you can't get by time back. You can't. You got to go forward. You can't recreate history, So all of us at one point face endings, whether it's domestic, relationships, friendships, jobs, or whatever it is. And it's how we take that ending on board and how we deal with it, because we all have to face it, and we'll all have to face checking out one day without being too gloomy or doomy. But it's just a thing that all we have is time, and we should use it as best we can. And endings do come. It's a part of life, and we just have to accept it and move on. And that's it.
You're kicking off a European tour this week, runs through October, mostly European, but I assume that, you know, Europe's a little easier to tour because you're over there and you don't have to pay the costs of all the things that come over to the States or stuff like
Yeah,
that. Is that
I
true?
mean, well, we'd love to. You know, we don't. If you look at our Facebook at the moment, it's inundated with people saying, "Why don't you come to France? Why don't you come to Turkey? Why don't you come to here?" That we can't. We'd love to, but we only go where we're invited. We get for our. It's very rare that we request, "Okay, we want to play here." It's very rare. We get our tour dates put in front of us, and that's where we go because that's where we're invited. That's where the market is. Because the project, just Jimmy, the technician Deep Purple, was saying we're probably one of the most expensive outfits at this level touring. It's an expensive thing to run, and even logistics getting into Ireland, my own home country, is virtually impossible. So it's mainly mainland Europe that we cover, probably about 12 to 14 countries there, and but as I said, there's so many people saying, "Well, why don't you come?" We can't. We just go where we're invited. We can't just say it's meant with no disrespect. We love to play everywhere. We love all our audiences all over the world that buy our records, and we would love to go to the States. We really would, but at the moment, I don't think it's viable. I think there was a North American tour planned for the Human Mechanic, but it didn't. It didn't come to anything in the end. I think it was because of the logistics were involved were pretty heavy. And in the end, we realized that we would probably only break even. And at our ages, over 50, most of us, especially Ian, it's a thing that we had to consider seriously. If we were a younger band in our 18s, or we needed to get more developed, or we're new, obviously we would do that, and we would go to Australia and do Japan and stuff. But at the moment, it's the only in the foreseeable future, the only touring plan is in mainland Europe. But you never know with this band. You never know what comes up because it's a spontaneous kind of a machine. Yeah.
So I was looking through your bio, and Ian's not the only Deep Purple alumni that you've worked with. I saw that you've worked with Lynn Turner in the past. What was that about?
Oh, that was a brilliant night. We did a couple of dates in Russia with Joe. Oh God, that was in 2010, and it was brilliant. Joe was great. I remember meeting him the first. He's a kind, lovable creature. Great singer, great frontman, and yeah, that was a part. We partied heavy together and shared some great stories. He shared some great rainbow stories, of course. And it was great working with him. We shared the set. I did the first half of the set. He did a little bit of the second, and then we did about 3 encores together. And yeah, it was great. Joe was a top geezer, top man. Yeah.
You mentioned his work in Rainbow too, and you worked with someone from Rainbow, another member of Rainbow alumni, Tony Carey. What was the circumstance for that?
Tony, I didn't actually meet Tony because he was in the studio at a different time to me when we were making Venus of Volcanus. And I think it was one of the lads that was in the band at the time. Tony owed them a favor or something, and we needed a Moog and a keyboard solo that would have fit Tony anyway. And it was suggested to me, and I agreed. I said, of course, fantastic. Why not? You know, so Tony did a great job. I think the track was called Wonderful, if my memory serves me right. And it was with Ian. Ian was on drums and Tony Carey on keys. Yeah. But the most colorful Rainbow person I've ever worked with was Paul Norris from the Stranger in Us All, the keyboard player. He was a real character, a real rock and roller, that guy. And I was very sad when he left the band. He was very, very, very funny. He was a really, really funny guy, and we became very close. And of course, because of the distance, bringing him from stateside into Europe for a one-nighter was getting difficult. So yeah, so we amicably split up. So unfortunately, but we keep contact, and oh my God, yeah, he's a real rock and roller. My God. Yeah.
All right, next question is going to put you on the spot. We're going to do best Deep Purple album, worst Deep Purple album. I'll join in with you. So, what, in your opinion, is the best Deep Purple album?
You know, it's funny you asked me that question because I remember one of the early days when I was with Ian, I said, I saw all your DVDs. And he said, oh, thanks, man. It's in a bin around the corner. No, seriously. So, oh my God. I mean, growing up, I mean, I loved a lot of different kinds of music, but obviously Purple was a big moment. They were definitely the heaviest. You know, Black Sabbath had this turgy thing going on, but Purple were just ridiculously good. It's really difficult. I think one of the worst albums that I can remember was Rapture the Deep, I think it was. Rapture the Deep. And one of my favorites is a live one called Scandinavian Nights from 1970, where they only play five songs in the set, about 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long. I mean, the concentration levels back then were hazy due to narcotics and people passing out on the floor. But it's a wonderful snapshot of what Purple were, and there were just five guys bouncing off each other, jamming, but really heavy and dynamically perfect, and just absolutely on it. A band right on top of its game, and I rate it better than Made in Japan. But if it was a studio album, I mean, it's very difficult. I suppose I'd say In Rock, because that was the one that opened my eyes really wide. In Rock, when I heard In Rock, it was Jesus Christ, man, that's a bit good, you know. So yeah, but just don't tell Ian I said that.
Don't worry, he won't remember your response. He's going to remember mine.
Exactly.
For best records, definitely Stormbringer and Perfect Strangers from the 80s. I thought that the production on that, just pure 80s and stuff like that. But as far as worst Deep Purple album, anything after 1996.
You know what? I get that. I get that. I really get that. It got a bit.
Couple of good songs here and there, but overall as albums, I don't ever go back to them.
Yeah, no, me neither. The thing with me was after Richie quit, if you take John Lord and Richie out of the equation, it's difficult. You've got a real uphill task, you know, to convince. But they didn't want it. From my perspective, they didn't want it. They just wanted to carry on playing and having fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's still a great band. But John and Richie were something else, and those early, I have to admit, them early gigs with Steve Morse were really something else. I never heard a player like Steve Morse before. He's so melodic and lyrically in his playing. I've never heard a player like that, and I was wow, Jesus, wept, you know, and completely dogmatically different to Blackmore, of course, which is nothing the same with Tommy Bolin. I'm a huge fan of Tommy Bolin. What a player he is, or was. And so I can understand why you say that after the 90s. Got a little bit, for me, it got a little bit repetitive. And for me, Deep Purple was always a jamming band. Always, if you listen to Lord and Blackmore, they used to turn a show right on its head and do what they want. They take the music right down to the floor. They would just jam where they wanted to. So you never knew what you were going to get. That's why it was so exciting. But nowadays, it's basically the show is A to Z or A to B or whatever you want to call it. And it's fairly mainstream and polished. And it's still technically brilliant. But you don't have the but you don't have the excuse me?
The album gets you to the show now, where the show got you to buy the album back then.
Exactly. It's gone around the other way, isn't it? Exactly. Very observant. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point, George. Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other music projects you work on in your downtime from Purpendicular?
No, I tend to I'm very old school. I'll tell you why. I always believe that you can only put 100% into one project. And you'll know what I'm talking about when I say this. Years ago, if you picked up an album and you looked at it, it was Led Zeppelin 2. So you knew that Robert Plant is a singer, and he's only the singer of Led Zeppelin. And then you go to Rainbow, so Ronnie Dio. or Gillan Purple, or Aussie Black Sabbath. It was all Roger Daltrey. It was all one singer for one unit back then. Nowadays, you get one singer doing 20 projects, and I don't get that. I mean, from my perspective, is you're just diluting yourself. I think if you're any good, you should be able to form your own band, your own business, no matter how small it is or how big, doesn't matter, and make a comfortable living from it. But when you're probably not business orientated, you probably think that's your only option, to jump from one band to the next. And when you do that, you're deluding yourself. That is my opinion. But I do understand people need to work, they need to pay their bills or their mortgage or whatever they have to pay. But from my perspective, Perpendicular is just about enough for me, because I do other stuff behind the scenes with for the business and stuff, and then it leaves enough for my family and then my hobby in motor racing. So that's about it.
There you go.
Yeah. So, cool. Yeah.
Well, Robbie, those are all the questions I have for you today. The new Perpendicular album is called Band. It comes out October 10th through Metalville Records, and I want to thank you for taking the time to tell me more about it today.
No problem, George. Great seeing you again, man.